The Tree of Life Overview. This is a video that I think is going to be very important because there are many people watching my videos that are not familiar with these ideas yet, and it's very important. And as always, I want to make sure that my videos are not what everyone else is talking about or parroting. I'm going to try to bring in information that may be new for some of you. We're taking a look at the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. And we're going to be bringing in a little bit more traditional Kabbalah for people, a little bit. So, we're going to take a look at this. This Tree of Life behind me is a map of everything. It's a map of everything, essentially. This is a map of the process of creation. It's a map of our pathway of ascent. It's a pathway that shows us how to bring down power, how to manifest things. It's our way back towards union. So it's both of these things. And today, hi Kimberly, today we're going to try to talk about a little bit about all of it. How to bring down power and also kind of elevate ourselves and move back to our source. This includes both ascent and descent. Descent is channeling power down into the material world. That's what descent is. The process of Maseh Bereshit. Notice that this bottom Sefirot, Malchut, this bottom circle here is the physical world. That's the physical universe. Everything above Malchut is said to be in the spiritual realm. So this is an attempt to kind of map the higher realms, higher dimensions, and kind of understand how spiritual forces manifest in our world. It's a glimpse behind the veil at what lies behind matter, as we understand it, what lies behind our world. So again, this bottom Sefirot, Malchut, this is the physical world. All of this is said to be in the higher dimensions, the higher realms. So very important to understand. So many people obviously have found this map very useful and powerful because it's endured throughout the centuries. So, the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. The first thing we need to understand is where this map came from. We need to understand where the map originated. This Tree of Life dates back to the Middle Ages, basically. This Tree of Life is derived from older sources, but you won't see an ancient version of this, at least not written down, prior to the Zohar and the Sefirot school. But where does all of this come from? Many people are not aware that the 10 Sefirot and 22 paths come right out of Genesis chapter 1. This whole tree is based on Genesis chapter 1. In the first chapter of Genesis, and we're not talking religion here, this isn't about religion or dogma, but we need to understand these Jewish mystical sources to understand where did we get all of this? So where did all of this come from? It all comes from Genesis chapter 1. The word Elohim, which is a lot to unpack in itself because it's not the word of unity, it's the word of multiplicity, Elohim. But there's a reason, which we'll get into. The word Elohim in the first chapter of Genesis appears exactly 32 times. So in the first chapter of Genesis that talks about the process of creation, the word Elohim appears exactly 32 times. Of those 32 times, there are 10 sayings 10 times it says God said, and there are 10 Sefirot. There are 3 times that it says God made, and there are 3 horizontal paths. 3 horizontal paths and 3 mother letters. There are 7 times that it said God saw, and there are 7 vertical lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 vertical lines, and 7 times it says God saw. And there are 12 other times that the word Elohim appears in Genesis 1, and there are exactly 12 horizontal lines. So that's important to understand. Whatever your view of all of this whole tree of life is coming straight out of the first chapter of Genesis, all of it. The word Elohim appears 32 times. Of those 32 times, there are 10 sayings, and there are 10 Sefirot. There are exactly 3 times it says Elohim made, God made, in Genesis 1, and there are exactly 3 horizontal lines and 3 mother letters. In the first chapter of Genesis, there's 7 times it said God saw, and there are exactly 7 vertical lines on the tree of life, and there are 12 other times and 12 diagonal lines. Now, these also show 3 dimensions. The 22 Hebrew letters, 3 mothers, 7 doubles, 12 simples or elementals. And there also show 3 dimensions here. The vertical lines being height, the horizontal lines being width, and the diagonal lines being depth. So we also have expressed here 3 dimensions with height, width, and the diagonal lines representing depth. So all of this is found in the first chapter of Genesis. So the word Elohim is actually plural. It has a feminine singular attached to a masculine plural. And what are these multiplicity of forces? Well, it's pretty clear from a Kabbalistic perspective because of the principle of number. This multiplicity of forces happens 32 times with exactly 10 sayings, 7 saws, 3 maids, and 12 other times. The 10 Sefirot and the 22 Hebrew letters. This is the many forces that happen behind the process of creation. And these are mapped graphically on the Kabbalistic tree of life. So that's important to understand. So, what is, I try not to go into religion here, but we kind of have to going into these Kabbalistic Jewish mystical sources. What is the Kabbalistic understanding of God? The G word. It's no thing. It's not nothing. It's the lack of things. The highest aspect, God in God's essence, is not white or black, or even good or evil, or anything. There's nothing you could say about it because it's just infinite. It's infinite intelligence. So, from a Kabbalistic perspective of what God is and God's essence, the root of being, not a man on a throne, the ground of existence is that the divine is, it's just the infinite without boundaries. It's not white or black or even good or evil or any of these things. It's just the infinite, timeless, eternal. And to understand what creation is, we understand 3 things that are found in the Sefer Yetzirah, and these are breath, voice, and speech. Breath, voice, and speech. So, we can look at the multiplicity of things in the world and understand that they come from a unity, and this is related to breath, voice, and speech. So the breath is the source of speech. Breath is the source of speech. It's silent. You can't really hear breath. I mean, you could hear air moving, so Do you hear that? Breath is silent. At most, it's a gust of wind or spirit. What is speech? Speech would relate, so breath would refer to Keter. Speech would refer to the second Sefirot, Chokmah. Speech is just unmodulated sound. You can perceive it. It is a thing that is sensible in a way, but there are no distinctions in speech. Raw speech is just, oh, that's speech. There are not any distinct sounds or tones in speech. So speech is like the word. The word was spoken with breath. So that is Chokmah. Binah takes speech and it makes distinct forms. And this is, voice. Breath, voice. Speech is the third thing. This is just raw voice. Speech is where you take voice and you make distinct sounds, distinct tones and letters and words. So you take from breath, you take voice, just voice, and you modulate it and you make distinct sounds, distinct letters. And mythologically speaking, we're not getting stuck in literalism, the speaking into creation, all the multiplicity of words, planets, humans, trees, flowers, clouds, stars, sun, moon, anything, male, female. With the process of speaking, you take voice and you make a multiplicity of things. So you understand, not from a literal perspective. The thing is, we're talking about things that are beyond our everyday human world. We're talking about things that are beyond that, and we're trying to express it in ways that our human meat brains can kind of comprehend. So the map is not the territory. But you can understand from a mythopoetic perspective that all the words for things are composed of letters, and those letters are raw forces, but they're all modulation of the same thing, voice. So you could say all things that exist here are really modifications of one thing, one energy. And what is breath? If the world was spoken into being, again, not literal, kind of a mythopoetic perspective that points towards a higher meaning. The map is not the territory. And if the world was spoken into being, speech comes from your own breath. So you could say that everything that exists is a condensation of the divine breath, or the divine spirit. Everything that exists is divine. There is nothing that is separated from the divine. Now, there are many different views in the Kabbalah, many different perspectives of the Kabbalah. But generally speaking, if we have to kind of make generalizations, everything that exists is one. All things are divine. Everything that exists is divine. In fact, it's interesting, one very mainstream interpretation of the Kabbalah, it's very popular in Hasidut, in Hasidic Kabbalah. It's not atheism, it's acosmism. It's really funny. It's the opposite of atheism. It's not no God, atheism. It's acosmism. There's no universe. And I've joked about this in my videos before, going and trolling the atheists and be like, you really think there's a universe? You really believe in a universe? It's a hologram, bro. I'm half kidding. But it's a very mainstream view in the Kabbalah that the world is a dream. Everything is God. Everything that exists is God. There is nothing that is separate from God. And from a Kabbalistic perspective, one mainstream view, there's no such thing as an eternal hell. There's no such thing as anything that is... There's no eternal hell. There's no God versus the devil. There's none of this. Reincarnation is found in the Zohar, foundational text of the Kabbalah, the Zohar reincarnation, the Bahir, 12th century Kabbalistic text. And then, of course, the writings of the Arizal. He was said to be able to look at people and tell their past lives, and be able, by looking at someone, be able to tell them what kind of personal tikkun or rectifications that they need to undergo, because we all carry past life baggage. So, not trying to bring in, I'm not trying to bring in religion or anything like that. But understanding these ideas, they are talking about the divine and the soul. So we kind of have to go into it. And there's a multiplicity of Kabbalistic perspectives. There's no one agreement. But we kind of have to go forward with this video. We kind of have to understand these, just get a basic overview. So from this perspective within the Kabbalah, anything that exists is God. Everything is God. There's reincarnation, no eternal hell. There's no God versus the devil. There's reincarnation. We learn our lessons, and we return to the principle of unity. Even what we would consider demons or shedim, demons from this perspective, they're not anything trying to oppose the divine. They perform a role in creation. They are part of nature, just like the wind or anything else. So demons or shedim, this is just one view. Some rabbis will correct me because they have a different perspective. But generally speaking, in the Kabbalah, anything that exists is divine. So if you look in the book of Job, Samael, or Satan, was part of the divine court. He was like a divine prosecutor. So from this perspective, what we call demons are just like genies, things that are close to matter. Often they are things that we resist, but that's how you get strong. When you go to the gym, you lift weights, you gain strength through resistance. So this idea of Satan or adversary is something to make us stronger. And this has nothing to do with left-hand path perspectives. We use similar language, but we mean different things. We come from a different mythos. Okay, so what I'm saying does not impinge or encroach upon any left-hand pathers. We use the same language. We mean different things. We have a different story to tell. So, everything is God. Everything is divine. We have reincarnation. And this is the process of creation. So, now we're going to try to work our way down the tree of life. How do you get from this world to an infinite? That is a problem. How do you go from the one to the many? So, that is a problem. And that's why many scholars believe, probably the majority of them, that the Kabbalah is a Jewish medieval interpretation of Neoplatonic ideas. So, who knows? Who cares? But everything begins with Keter. Keter is the number 1, and it's the crown. And it's interesting to note that the first or top Sefirot, Keter, means crown. It's something above the head, by the way. In the microcosm, it is super consciousness. It's above the head. But a crown is something that a king or a queen wears. A king or a queen wears a crown. The last Sephira, Malkut, means kingship or kingdom. Now, what is a king without a kingdom? It's a clown. It's somebody in a costume. Imagine somebody telling you they're a king or a queen. Well, where's your kingdom? I don't have one, but I'm a king. So anybody that calls themselves a king and they don't even have a kingdom, that's a clown, basically. It's someone walking around in royal garb and they don't even have a kingdom. And what does that mean? It means that it's not ascent for its own sake. We ascend in order to descend. We move upward in order to channel divine power downward. So the Kabbalah is not world denying like some systems where they see the world as a trap to escape. We see the purpose is to lift matter up, to make the world divine, to bring the divine presence here. Truth seekers, please don't leave. We kind of need you here. The world needs you. The purpose shouldn't be to just leave everyone behind and go be on a cloud. The purpose is to bring the divine presence here. And of course, eventually you move back up to the source permanently. You don't want to be in Gilgal forever. But for right now, like in this lifetime, the purpose should be, we are the eyes and the hands of the divine. It is through us, we are the vessels through which good things happen. We have to go out there and make it happen, make the world a better place. And this is a new Kabbalistic understanding of the divine kingdom, thy kingdom come, from Christianity. That idea of thy kingdom come, what is the divine kingdom? It is when this world becomes heavenly. It's when we lift this world up through the practice of lifting one another up, through helping to make the world a better place. Anyways, Keter is, there are no things in Keter. There are no things in it. Here's the difference between Keter and Malkut. Keter at the top of the tree is often called nothing. It's not really nothing. It's the lack of things. In Keter, everything exists in potential, but there's not yet a hot or cold or light or dark or male or female. There's no distinctions in Keter. It is the seed of existence, but in itself it is a unity. Before one, what can you count? Nothing. This idea of unity, the journey of 1,000 steps begins with one step. If you go to write any letter, it could be an A, you take a pen and paper, you can write A, B, C, you could write any letter, but as soon as the pen hits paper, it begins with a dot. So it doesn't matter what letter or thing you draw, it begins with a dot. It is the beginning, it is the point, it is the source of everything. And we see in an analogy, in the solar system, there are many planets, but there is one sun. There is one sun. So there are many different planets, and there's one sun. Each of the planets has certain powers, but they all come from the sun. To the sun they return. So within a solar system, as an example, there is a diversity of planets, and yet they all circle around the same fiery center, their same root source. There is a unity behind it all, which is the sun. And there's so many things you can do with this. For one thing, what is from this perspective, but everything begins with the Big Bang. All planets circle around the sun. In the physical body, everything responds to the brain. The heart beats a certain way because there's a part of the brain that controls the heartbeat. The metabolism is controlled by the brain. The circulation, everything that exists in a whole body comes from the brain, the head, which controls everything through the nervous system. An interesting correlation with the nervous system is that there are 31 nerves. There are 31 nerves in the body connected to, in the nervous system, there are 31 nerves. And there are 12 cranial nerves. In Kabbalah, that's the gematria of Hu, which refers to Keter. And you could take the 12 cranial nerves as one nerve. You have 32 nerves. You have 10 Sefirot and 22 paths. So you could say, in a similar way, to understand how the tree of life works in creation, is an analogy in the microcosm because it's found in the body. Now, did they just make this stuff up, or is it divinely inspired? Or is it the same thing in the end? The end is in the beginning. But what is the nervous system to us, like these 32 paths of wisdom? What are the nerves? The nerves allow us to interact with creation. That's like this downpouring. And the nerves also allow impressions from creation to reach our consciousness in the same way as things moving upwards. If I touch something hot and it burns my hand, that energy travels through the paths to the root. So it's an example of how the 32 paths of wisdom correlate in the body. It is how we interact with the world, moving objects, moving down the tree, and it's how the world goes up to interact with the root of consciousness, moving up the tree. So there's an analogy there between the nerves and the nervous system. Now, everything begins with the undifferentiated breath of existence. Chokmah. Now, something I have to say here. Traditional Kabbalah does not switch the tree in the microcosm. It does not switch the tree around. The right side is the right side. The left side is the left side. End of story. The reason I say that is because the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and later after that Western systems, Dion Fortune, they all say that you switch the tree around in the microcosm. I'm in no way saying that's wrong. That's correct for that system. That's correct for that system. But traditional Kabbalah does not switch around in the microcosm, and there's a reason for that. Because the tree is not something you can stand outside of and look at. The tree is something that exists within us. It's not something we can look at from outside to start with. So, chesed, loving kindness, is the right hand. The right hand. Let your right hand uphold me. It's the right hand that is chesed. And it is the left hand that is gevurah. And so, I just need to point this out because of what I'm about to get into. I don't want anyone to take my word on anything. Just look it up. If you look up Chokmah and Binah, you'll see in the traditional Kabbalah, Chokmah is actually the right hemisphere. It's the burst of intuition. It's that flash of inspiration, which goes into the left hemisphere and the logical, rational part of the mind, and it's made into a type of map or plan. These 6 Sefirot, which are like the child in the womb, which is finally born. So, I know that will rub some people the wrong way, because it goes totally against what we're taught in modern, modern occult orders and stuff. It's not wrong or right, it's just different, okay? But if you just look up Chokmah and Binah on any Jewish website or go ask a rabbi, they'll tell you Chokmah is the right hemisphere, and it's that flash of it. It's the light bulb. You ever see in those cartoons where you get a light bulb above the head and it's an idea? Well, that idea has to be mapped and planned logically. How am I going to do this? How am I going to plan this out? That ruminating is taking that seed of flash of insight and it's making a map. And that map here is reflected in these 6 Sefirot, which manifest as the birth or the daughter. It's Malkut. Something I want to point out before I move on with this, before I go deeper into this, I want to return to this idea of Malkut and matter. The physical world is not seen as evil. This world of matter is not evil. The physical world is mom. It's mama. It's mom. In Kabbalistic language, this refers to the feminine divine presence that's found in this world. the physical world is mom. It is mother. And the divine feminine is extremely important in the Kabbalah. As you're going to see in this video, the divine feminine is very important. I made an 1.5-hour video on the Shekinah. So if you're interested in knowing more about the Shekinah or the divine feminine, I have that video on my channel. I have it on my Facebook. The Shekinah, I made an 1.5-hour video. Might have been a 2-hour video talking about the Shekinah. Anyways, the material world, and this whole pillar of form is the feminine. So we don't deny the physical world or view the physical world as evil, or matter is evil, or deny the world. This is just part of a polarity. Denying of the physical world is akin to denying the divine feminine. So, back up here with the supernals. Keter is superconsciousness. It's the infinite. Chokmah is that flash of insight. It's intuition. Binah is reasoning and logic. You'll notice that there's no abyss here. There's no goal for abyss separating the supernals, because it's a continuous thing. In the microcosm, this is just our intuitive insight and our logical parts of the mind. And these 6 Sefirot represent the emotions, the feelings, and centered in Sefirot, or the heart. Which is reflected in the outermost shell of the body and the material world in Malkut. So you can go from the most exterior, Malkut, work yourself up to all the feelings and emotions that we have, these 6 midot, or Sefirot here in Yetzirah, up to the intellect or the thoughts, and all the way up to the intuitive flash of insight, all the way to superconsciousness, where it's just infinite energy. So in the microcosm, this is all the way from the most exterior part, the cover of the book, to the most inward part of the book, using an analogy, which are not the letters or the multiplicity. It's the white pages. It's the white blank page behind the letters. That is Keter, or superconsciousness. If we're to look at a human being as like a book, Malkut is the cover, and it's not evil. It's just the most exterior expression, and the most inward part are not the letters. It's the white page behind all letters. So that is a basic thing to understand. Keter, Chokmah, and Binah. In the Kabbalah, we often use a Natarikon. It's just a shorthand way to refer to things. So these are often called kahab. Kahab. So when you say kahab, it's just an easy way to say Keter, Chokmah, and Binah. In the same way as the 4 worlds, Atzilut, Bria, Yetzir, and Asiya, we call it Abia. It's an acronym. Abia is a very short way to say Atzilut, Bria, Yetzir, and Asiya. So anyways, we have superconsciousness, Keter. We have that flash of insight. We have the logical mind. Now, why is this the case? So, I don't want to make this video too long. It will be long, but not more than necessary. But Chokmah is the letter Yud, and you could say that Keter is the tip of the Yud. Chokmah is the letter Yud, which has a gematria of 10, and by reduction, 10, 1 plus 0 is 1. So the Yod is a point. It's a unity. It's undifferentiated energy. In the Genesis 1, this is let there be light. God said, let there be light. It's a flash of light. And you could see all the lower Sefirot is like a prism, the colors of a prism. It's one light in different colors by vibration. These are not separate entities. These are like 10 filters, but it's one light through all of them. But it's all one principle. But anyways, so Chokmah is just raw, undifferentiated energy. Binah. Binah comes from the root word bain. It means between. For example, between this and that. Binah differentiates between this and that. That's what bain, the root of binah or understanding, means. It's distinctions. So while it's just a rush of energy and Chokmah, binah makes distinctions. Assigned to the letter He, the letter He has a gematria of 5. And 5 halves anything that it's multiplied with. For example, what is 5 times 5? That's a bad example. What is 5 times 10? 50. 5 plus 0 is 5. So 5, by multiplying it by 10, you come out to 5, which is half. 5 times 8 is 40. 4 plus 0 is 4. So 5 halves 8 into 4. 5 times 5 is 25. Move a decimal point, you have 2.5. Which is half of 5. So 5 divides, it halves. And binah, between this and that. It's that discursive logic where there is differentiation. And again, this is the pillar of form. It takes the raw energy of force and it gives it a form. So binah is the rational insight. Now, these 6 Sefirot, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod, are the emotions, the feelings, centered in Tiferet, or the heart. The supernals are called Mohin in Hebrew, the brains, whereas the 6 Midot, these are the emotions. So if you think about it, emotions are based on preconceived ideas. If you feel emotionally, you feel a certain way about a thing, it's because you have an idea in your mind of what it is. You have a thought, and then you feel a certain way. If I look at something and I logically don't even know what it is, now you can have a flash of intuitive insight, but generally speaking in everyday life, if I just see a blob, there's no emotional impact. If I understand it's a car accident, I'm going to feel a certain way. It's a car accident. Or whatever. It's the preconceived ideas. It's from the thought that you respond with an emotion which responds in malkut or action. The Kabbalah is a way of looking within to also looking without, out there. Chesed and Gevurah, and this is so important for ethics, so important for dealing with the world. Kabbalah does not believe in just being a little meek lamb for the slaughter. It doesn't believe in just being nice all the time. That is unbalanced chesed. You have to have Gevurah, which is that warlike, that destructive sometimes, that harsh aspect of our nature. Sometimes you have to be tough with people. So the key is not just giving and loving all the time. Sometimes you have to be harsh. And Tiferet is measured justice, or you could just as equally say measured mercy, which is truly compassion. If you're parenting, you can't just give your kid their way all the time. They'll never go to school, and they'll be a brat. And you can't just be harsh all the time. Sometimes you have to tell your kids no. And that's Tiferet. It's a balance of severity and mercy. It's measured kindness. In terms of the creation of the world, everything begins in raw, infinite potential. There's a flash of energy, kind of like the Big Bang. And then Binah is the limitation. It takes that raw energy and it gives it a form and a structure, a predetermined form. behind things. Chesed is expansion. Okay, Gevurah is limitation. If everything just, we can say that these are cohesion and adhesion. So cohesion and adhesion. Cohesion holds things together. Adhesion keeps things from blending into each other. If the principles of expansion and contraction were any differently balanced, the universe would either implode upon itself or it would explode. We would just drift apart into nothing. Or we would implode into like a concrete ball if these forces of chesed and gevurah, or expansion and limitation or contraction, were not in perfect equilibrium. So these ideas can clearly be found just thinking about the world, even from a modern perspective, many centuries later. Okay, this is way before modern science, and yet a lot of this seems to check out. And then Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. Netzach means victory, and it's endurance. These are the legs. This is what carries us in the world. It's our drive. Netzach is victory, and it's our endurance. When you persevere, no matter what obstacle you push through. Let's say that you're trying to create whatever, right? You have a goal in mind. No matter what happens, you push through obstacles. You're going to make it happen no matter what. That is Netzach, victory. Hold is, it draws inward. Hold is adaptability. Hold is the adaptability, and it takes a little humility to say, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I need to change it up and do it this way. You ever meet someone that's too hard-headed? You try to explain to them that what they're doing is probably not the greatest idea. They need to change something up. It's too much netzach. They have this idea for dominion and victory and pushing through, but they're not adaptable. They're not changeable. Hod is changeability. You adapt and change to the circumstances. Too much hold is someone that has a different plan every day. Too much hold, there's no perseverance in that person. If someone has excess hold, it's the opposite of the hard-headed person that goes no matter what. Too much hold or changeability, they will never stick with things. They'll always reevaluate and come up with a new thing, non-stop. You have to have a balance between these, and these are our two legs that carry us, netzach and hod. These are balanced in yesod, which is the reproductive organs in the microcosm. It's the reproductive organs, the genitals, but it's also the drive. It is chai, life. So yesod is the balance between these. It's drive. You have to persevere and you have to be adaptable, and these together are your drive, your driving force forward. So what you have here in these triads, you balance, but balance is not always a stasis in the middle. Balance sometimes is like a pendulum swinging from one side to the other. So balance is not just still in the middle, a stasis. Balance is indeed, sometimes you need more chesed, sometimes you need more gevurah, sometimes you have to push through obstacles, sometimes you need to be adaptable, sometimes you need that intuitive insight, that intuition, sometimes you need to be more logical and rational, okay? In fact, you could say that the whole tree of life is a pendulum swing moving downward, with the middle pillar being the midway point. So up here we have logic and intuition. And metaphorically speaking, when you live in a rational world, a skeptical, rational, logical society, without that spiritual intuition, that poetic, just that aspect of things, then we live in a dry, sterile, and infertile place. The intellect becomes fertile when we bring in spiritual insight. You'll notice that there's a lot of switching, and I think it's intentional. It's part of the mystery. There's a lot of reversal of gender stereotypes here. I think there's a reversal of gender stereotypes here. Not because they were so good and trying to be progressive, but because it's showing that these things, to a certain extent, are illusory. They are polarities. So, for example, society tends to view men as rational and women as intuitive. It flips it. I think it's intentional. Society seems to see women as caring and loving and men as harsh or warlike. It flips it. Etc., 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 right? So there's a lot of switching of what we would consider historically gender stereotypes here. And again, I don't think it's for progress. I think it's for something deeper and more alchemical than that. Although that would be cool if that was the case, but I just don't think it is. But there's a lot of switching. Interestingly, divine wrath, this is not very popular with many people when they think of religion. Divine wrath, in the Kabbalah, it's not an angry king on a throne. Divine wrath, or Gevurah, is... It's you have to understand the Kabbalistic idea of God. Even though God appears in anthropomorphic forms in the Bible, it's a mythology, sacred stories. But when people take it like that, that's not what it is. In the Kabbalah, you're talking about that which is behind nature, that which is behind the world. A lot of our problems, not all of them, that's up for you to decide. I think that can lead to victim blaming when you take it too far. I'm not a fan of the idea that, but people can think whatever they want. I don't care. I'm not here to debate that, whatever. But a lot of times, at least, our problems in life are our own fault. If your wife dumps you, there's something wrong. You did something wrong. Or if you get fired, or whatever it is, right? If you steal from the cash register enough, you're eventually going to go to prison. If you drink and drive long enough, you're eventually at least going to have a wreck and get a DWI and go to jail. If you lie enough, you're going to get caught in your lies. So instead of thinking an angry king on a throne, the Kabbalistic higher understanding of what is divine wrath, it's just a simple example of play stupid games, win stupid prizes. It's a classic fuck around and find out. All right? You go around drinking and driving, you're going to have a wreck eventually. Okay? So, it's interesting to point out, though, that wrathful aspect, that harsh aspect, is actually on the divine feminine. That wrathful divine wrath is actually on the divine feminine pillar, which those of you that have studied other systems, you could actually think of like Kali or Kali Ma in the Eastern systems. But yeah, the divine wrath is actually seen as part of the divine feminine in the Kabbalah, which actually surprises a lot of people. It's mom is angry. Mother Nature is angry. Okay. So, the left-hand pillar referring to the feminine is referred to as Elohim. And Elohim is also, the gematria is 86, which is the gematria of Hateva, nature, Mother Nature. So, what we consider, when you think of divine wrath, that's actually a part of the divine feminine in the Kabbalah. That's the feminine aspect of God that's had enough. So, I thought I would bring in a little bit of this. By the way, the Psalms, since we're talking about wrath, the Psalms are clearly magic incantations. You're really not going to see a whole lot of difference if you just approach it from that mindset. It's going to be instantly clear that the book of Psalms, that's why you have psalm magic. Psalm magic is in the key of Solomon. It's used by root workers and hoodoo practitioners. Why do people in hoodoo and root work use psalm magic? Why is psalm magic in the key of Solomon? Why is psalm magic everywhere? Because it's effective. So these are clearly incantations. Let me read you something. We're talking about divine wrath. Let me know what you think. We're going to read Psalm 109, verses 17 through 20. This is clearly a curse. Okay? And this shows that this stuff is not all white light, puppy dogs and rainbows. There's a balance. But traditionally, a practitioner of Kabbalah should be trying to do good in the world, but sometimes you get people oppressing you, and you're not doing anything wrong, and people are just coming at you. I'm going to show you a clear example of a curse. I'm going to read Psalm 109, 17 through 20. It's 3 verses. I'm going to read it. You draw your own conclusions. What do you think this sounds like? He loved to curse, may cursing come upon him. He would not bless, may blessing be far from him. May he be clothed in a curse like a garment. May it enter his body like water, his bones like oil. Let it be the cloak he wraps about him, like the belt he always wears. May the Lord thus repay my accusers, all those who speak evil against me. It's talking about slanderers, people that are running their mouths about you behind your back. It sounds a little bit like a curse, but I could be wrong. So I'm not encouraging people to do bad stuff. I'm not. But I was just talking about divine wrath, and it made me think of psalm magic. So it sounds like there's someone, if someone's bad-mouthing you, this is your psalm verse. It's magic. It's a curse. It's clearly an incantation. I'm going to read it one more time. It's talking about a slanderer. When it says he, it's talking about somebody that's talking bad about you. They're spreading gossip. He loved to curse. May a curse come upon him. He loved a curse. May a curse come upon him. He would not bless. May blessing be far from him. May he be clothed in a curse like a garment. May it enter his body like water, his bones like oil. Let it be like the cloak he wraps around him, like the belt he always wears. May the Lord thus repay my accusers, all those who speak evil against me. So, yeah, psalm magic. I'm not encouraging people to do bad stuff. It's just when I was talking about divine wrath, it just made me think of that verse. I have it memorized, you know. I knew exactly where to flip. I didn't have to think about it. I just thought, oh, Psalm 109, verse 17 through 20. There's a reason I knew where to flip for that without even a thought. Anyways, back to puppy dogs and rainbows a moment. So, Genesis 1 shows the whole Kabbalistic tree of life. Okay? So there are 10 sayings. 10 times it says God said. but we're including the first verse as a saying. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim vet haaretz. In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And that is considered a saying, and it's keter. It has the whole thing within it, because the whole tree is within it. Okay? What is the next saying? God said, let there be light. Chokmah. Okay? And then the days actually respond to the 7 lower Sefirot. So that is day 1, which shows this pillar here, Chesed, holds the light of Chokmah. What is the third saying? This is Binah. Remember how I said Binah differentiates? It differentiates. It differentiates, y'all. It separates. God's, and Binah means bane, between this and that. Binah divides. The next saying, God said, Vayomer et Elohim, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters. Let there be a firmament to divide the waters above and below. That's a division. That's Binah. God said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the water, that it may separate water from water. Water's also referring to the seminal fluid, but also energy flowing. But it'll divide water from water. That's Binah. God made the expanse, and it separated the water. By the way, this expanse is going to be the letter Shin, the first mother letter. So the whole tree of life is found in Genesis 1. God called the expanse sky, and there was evening and there was morning, the second day. Second day being Gevurah, which holds this energy of division and separation. Gevurah itself being a divider. Okay, the third saying, let the waters below, and this is the Sefirot are within the Sefirot. Okay, the third day, the creation of the luminaries is Tiferet. Okay, you seeing how it adds up? But the next saying, let the waters, which is Chesed, let the waters below the sky be gathered into one area, so that dry land may appear. And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the gathering of waters he called seas. Okay, and God saw that this was good. The seeing is going to be a vertical path. I don't really have time to work my whole way through this, but it's going to talk about seas on these 2 Sefirot. It's going to talk about land, and land bringing forth living creatures, the waters bringing forth living creatures. The 6th day, Adam, mankind was created in Yesod. There's a lot to say about that, because Yesod is connection. It's what connects all things. It's also the condensation. It's also the form and the pattern. And this is where human beings come in. Finally, the rest on the 7th day. So there's a whole thing that we can go into in that. By the way, God is clearly masculine and feminine, because it says, I think it's, yeah, it is. I was thinking Genesis 1:27. Now, the word he could also mean it. Hebrew is a gendered language, just like Spanish. In Spanish, as an example, objects are either male or female. Like in Spanish, mesa means table, but it's a feminine word. Zapato, shoe, is a masculine word. Cama is feminine word. Casa is feminine word. Etc., etc. Okay? You get the picture. Cabeza is a feminine word. These are objects, but they're either one or the other. There's no neutral pronoun. Same way with Hebrew. Where it says he, it's not necessarily gendered. It's translated that way, but whenever it refers to God as he, literally it could also mean it. So, keeping that in mind, Genesis 1:27, and God created mankind in his image, and the image of God he created them, male and female. It's right there, Genesis 1:27. God made mankind in his image, male and female. Clearly, the divine would have to be male and female. And where it says a rib, the word in Hebrew is tsela, which could equally be translated as side. Okay, the side. So that these were two halves of one whole. In traditional Kabbalistic understanding, Adam and Eve were actually two halves of one whole. There was a going to sleep. You could think going into the realm of illusion and dream. And he was put to sleep, and there was a division. The fruit, the forbidden fruit, was knowing good and evil, duality. The forbidden fruit was partaking of duality. That is the knowledge of good and evil. Now we have to have pleasure and pain. Success, we have to now experience great success and failures. Now in a world of duality, we have to now experience moments that make us proud and moments in life that make us ashamed. We now have to experience birth and death, youth and old age, happiness and sadness. We're plunged into a world of duality. From a Kabbalistic understanding, it was a true statement. You eat this, you'll die. What do we see? We see death. So, knowing good and evil, the forbidden fruit of good and evil, is knowing duality, the separation of subject and object. We now have to experience all these dualities, and of course you can't remain in a realm of unity at that point. So there was a splitting, and now we are no longer in the garden. We now have to have this Gilgul or reincarnation, like the wheel. It's like the wheel of fortune and tarot. You have the upturn of the wheel with success, followed by failure, the downturn. You have happy moments, the wheel's going up. You have unhappy moments. You have birth and youth, and then you have old age and death. You have happiness, followed by sadness. It's an endless wheel of experiencing now duality. So that's an important idea to understand, the Kabbalistic understanding of what happened in Genesis. The forbidden fruit of good and evil is an experience of duality. So now we have to constantly experience duality. And our goal is to end the wheel of rebirth, which is to get back to Eden, Gan Eden. And that is only one interpretation. There are other interpretations that are actually deeper than what I just said. What I just said is not by any means the most profound understanding. It's actually the most superficial. But it is one clear understanding. Notice that if you add up the numbers of these Sefirot, Keter is 1, plus 6 is Tiferet, plus 9 is Yesod, plus 10 Malkut. If you add these up, you get 26, which is Yud-Keh. Vav-Keh, it is the Tetragrammaton. And this whole process happens through a series of worlds. Now, putting this into practical perspective of ascent, Maseh Merkava, and creation, channeling power down to manifest our world, magic, you might say. The Maseh Bereshit, the act of creation, is all channeled through the four worlds, which are reflected in the Sefirot. 10 Sefirot, but 4 worlds? Well, that's easy to understand, because 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 equals 10. If you add the numbers from 1 to 4 inclusively, you get 10. So, Absolute is Chokmah. You could say the tip of the Yod is in Keter also. Absolute is a realm of pure unity. It is emanation. It's that flash of insight. And Binah is the world of Beriah. Beriah, that realm that in the microcosm is logic, and in the realm of the cosmos, this is a realm where the entities that exist there, the archangels, are pure intellects. Those that follow a polytheistic system that want to understand the Kabbalah, I don't think anybody can study Kabbalah. This would be the realm of what you might consider hypercosmic gods, entities that are like fashioners of the worlds, but they're beyond time and space. So a pagan may consider Beriah the realm of hypercosmic gods. In traditional Jewish Kabbalah language, this is the realm of the archangels. Yet Zera is the realm of emotions. And this is, broadly speaking, what people might consider the astral plane. I'm not going to go as deep as I did last night. Last night, I did like an hour and 11-minute video on the 4 worlds for my Patreon. If you're on my Patreon, half of my videos are just Patreon only. And most of them I don't plan to ever publish, actually. I think I'm just going to leave most of that. Every now and then, if it's over a year old, I'll release something from Patreon. But I've come to the conclusion I think Patreon needs to stay just Patreon. But last night I put half my videos there. I did a whole hour and 11 minutes just on the 4 worlds. But just a very brief, superficial. Yet Zera is the realm of demons, angels, elementals, souls of the dead. And it is the astral realm in its most broad, anything with a subtle body. A body of fine matter that's not physical, as we understand, would be in the realm of Yetzirah. Whereas Beriah, the entities there are bodiless. They are pure intellects. Yetzirah being the first place with form, as we understand it. Followed by Malkut, the physical. Now, in the pathway of ascent, we are returning to the root of our being or our source. I'm not trying to make this all religious, so if you say God or Ein Sof, I'm just trying to be inclusive in my videos. I believe you could just as easily say the Tao or Brahman, whatever you want to call the root of existence. That one thing that all things come out of, we don't have to do anything with that. That's there. That's absolute. It's just a constant outflowing. That's the root of our power. We have to have our mind, our intellect, rooted in the sacred to pull down this power. So by having our intellect on God or the Tao or Brahman, whatever, that plugs our intellect into this intuitive insight and divine inspiration. We are devakut, we are bonding with God, we're uniting with God, so the intellect is able to receive that power. Thelemites are always talking about finding their true will. What's my true will? What they have is a problem between Binah, the logic, and Chokmah, this spiritual intuition, is not in sync. What they're really seeking is a union of the supernals within them. It's plugging into the divine is a way to get our logical minds that we live in, our conscious minds, in communication with that which is divine, that divine inspiration. When you're in communion with nature or the divine, or through the filter of your subconscious, through that we get this spark of insight. So we need our intellects to be rooted in the divine presence to help pull down power and have what we call shefa, or the flow. That flow. The word Kabbalah, thank you for your patience. I know it's a long video. I'm almost done. Thank you so much. Y'all are so patient. I think it's probably been an hour. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, you know. Okay, I'm almost done. Kabbalah means reception. Kabbalah means reception. What are we receiving? The Ein Sof, or the infinite light. This should be lesson 1, okay? But not many people talk about this most basic of things. The very rude, what the hell? The very word, I don't know where that came from. The very word Kabbalah, for some reason I was thinking of a root, like a reed. I don't know. What's going on with my brain? Kabbalah means reception. What are you receiving? The Ein Sof, or the infinite light. It's called shefa, or the flow. You're receiving the infinite light, the powers of creation. Once you're so plugged in to the divine presence that you can begin to read the pattern behind matter. You're so plugged into the divine that you can begin to perhaps see events before they happen. You get so close to the divine presence that you begin to read God's mind. And also with this shefa, or flow, you begin getting what could be called prophetic powers. This is theurgy. This is God working. This is the idea that saints and prophets have power, wonder working. It's rooted because they are like plugged in like an outlet into the divine. They have this shefa, this flow, this Ein Sof, or gives them these theurgic powers. Okay, this is prophetic Kabbalah, because there are 3 types of Kabbalah. There is theoretical, which is reading books and thinking about stuff. And then there's the prophetic. That is this direct, ecstatic, devotional Kabbalah, bringing in the heart. Okay. Theoretical Kabbalah, reading books, that's like reading a book. Prophetic Kabbalah, or ecstatic, devotional Kabbalah, is like jumping in the water. Reading a book on swimming versus jumping in the water. If you've studied Kabbalah for 10, 15 years and you're not any closer to divine union, there's probably something wrong. It's because you're reading books. There's more to it than reading books. There's a doing. And of course, the 3rd type of Kabbalah is the creation of talismans, amulets, things like that, which is traditional. The Talmud has many examples of downright magic. Bezalel in the Talmud manipulates Hebrew letters to create the Mishkan, or tabernacle, in the wilderness. That's in the Talmud. He did this because he knew how to manipulate the letters. There's a story in the Talmud of some rabbis, some Jewish sages, that would create a calf to eat for the Sabbath by manipulating Hebrew letters. Magic is all throughout the Kabbalah, although some rabbis don't like to admit that. Many do. Okay? Many do admit it outwardly. But anyways, so, in terms of divine union, we put our mind upon the divine presence that's behind matter. By being logically conscious of it, we can begin interacting with it. We're plugged into the wall outlet to receive that shefa, or electricity, or power. Tiferet and all 6 of these Sefirot refer to the emotions centered in Tiferet, the heart. The heart, having the divine presence at the heart. Again, not trying to be religious or dogmatic. You can say the Tao or Brahman, whatever the great, Native American spirit, whatever you want to do, okay? I'm trying to be inclusive, whatever. Placing the divine presence, not just in the intellect, thinking about stuff, the heart, the path of devotion, okay, carries us upward. This is our fuel. Followed by So that is Berea, Yetzirah, centered in Tiferet. Finally, Asiya, Malkut, our actions. We should behave in the world as if we are aware of this higher unity. You shouldn't be cussing at people in traffic and, whatever. You need to understand your underlying unity. Behave as if you understand it and grasp it. So, by uniting, so when our four worlds are out of alignment, it's like a short and a wire. We can't receive the shefa or the flow. But when our actions are united to our heart, which is united to our intellect, which is united to the divine source, there is no short in the wire, to use an analogy. We're able to channel down that power and that flow and ascend. And in terms of magic, it's the same process, but a little bit less focused on God, more focused on your intent. Okay. Well, okay. Still rooted in source and this idea of shefa or flow. It's where you get your power. Berea, the intellect. If you're doing a spell or you're doing magic or you're reciting a prayer and you're busy thinking about work or what, you're not even thinking about what you're doing, there's a short in your wire. You're not able to plug in the same way and pull down power. You could still do spirit evocation and something hears you and does it, but ideally, if you're thinking your words as you speak them in the spell or you're reading a prayer, whatever you're doing, you need to be focused on what you're doing. Helps you to have your Berea, your Binah, plugged into absolute consciousness. You are plugged in. You need to think about what you're doing. You need to feel it. You could read a prayer or you can do a magic spell and you're thinking about it. Do you feel it at your heart? The emotions are the fuel that drives. So if you're reading a prayer, it's in mysticism, it's called kavana, that heart, that you feel what you're praying or doing or your ritual. So in the context of a ritual, Berea, you're absolute, you're plugged into the divine source, Berea, you're thinking about what you're doing, you feel it at your heart. As your heart beats, you are focused on this emotional impact of it, followed by Asiya, which are the physical actions of ritual, the actual speaking of the prayers, and follow-up. If you're trying to channel in abundance into your life, you need to have an outlet. You're not going to get a check in the mail. You need to have a business. You need to have some kind of physical outlet for that abundance to flow to you. And you need to have practical action. You ever heard the phrase, God helps those who help themselves? Yeah, my dad used to tell me that 1,000,000 times as a kid. Drove me nuts, But it's true in this case that if you're trying to manifest something, you should go. If you're looking for love and you just sit in your apartment or house and you don't talk to anybody, probably Prince Charm is not going to knock on your door with some roses, okay? You may have to go somewhere. That's an outlet. You want abundance? You need to have a business, some way for it to flow in. So this is all Asiya. Material things, practical action is the virtue of Malkut. Practical action. So anyways, I think that I covered everything. I appreciate your patience. I'm a little self-conscious because, man, I know these videos are... one thing I just wanted to add here is you see how this idea flows down the columns. The Yosher, the columns. So, Chokmah is this raw energy. Chesed is this expansive. So Chokmah is, I want to start a business. It's the light bulb. Or I want to start a group. Okay, I want to start some type of order or whatever. That's Chokmah consciousness. Brought down to Chesed. That's giving. You're given to your business. You're given to whatever you're doing. Expansive. Brings it down to Netzach, your drive to achieve. Okay, the left pillar. Your logic may tell you sometimes to put on the brakes or to put limitations on things so you don't run yourself ragged, you don't go nuts with stuff, maybe you don't give too much, whatever. Leads to hold, adaptability, and change. And then you see the same thing here, this super conscious insight brought down to what you feel it at your heart, brought down to your drive, brought down to your actions in the world. And then the interaction between the pillars, you have an idea, now you got to plan it out. How am I going to do this? How am I going to start a business? Oh, I want to start some type of group. That's you got it. You got your hokmah. You got an idea what you want. Now you need to map it out. How am I going to do this? How am I going to make it work? You give yourself, you put limitations on things, limits. Sometimes you got to be nice to people. Sometimes you got to be harsh. Okay? The result is a measured kindness, a measured giving. You endure and you push through obstacles, but sometimes you have to be changeable and adaptable. You have your drive, and then finally you have your actions in the world. And this is just how we create as co-creators in the world. There was a lot more that I wanted to do. I wanted to go into the paths. I wanted to go into how the 22 Hebrew letters are the paths, and the 10 Sefirot are actually the vowels between the letters. So there's a whole language involved. The recitation of tones with the letters, ascent in the tree of life. I wanted to go into all of this, but I think I'm out of time. We'll do another video on this. But just know that the pathways between the Sefirot are 22 letters, and the 10 Sefirot themselves could be seen as vowels. So Keter is the comet, an ah sound. Or Hokmah could be the Petach. And Binah, the Tsere, an A sound. But there's a second A sound, which could be seen as Chesed, represented by the Segol, which these are little dots around the Hebrew letters. You know, Holem for Tiferet, Netzach is the Hirek, an E sound. The kibbutz, an U sound for hold, shurek. So, as you see, between the 22 Hebrew letters, the 10 Sefirot could represent vowels between the letters. So, I want to go a lot deeper. This is really a very introductory video. Oh my God, 24 new comments I haven't looked at. I am so sorry if I left someone. I didn't see any of these comments. That's why I didn't read any. I didn't say anything. I literally saw none of this until now. I am so sorry I left y'all hanging with the comments. Anyway, this is an introductory, just 101 video. So I'm going to go deeper, okay? This is for somebody that this is class 1 on the tree of life. Alright, let me see here. Alright, y'all, I'm so sorry, but let's see. Y'all, a lot of this I'm just going to have to go into in a future video. I'm so sorry, I did not mean to leave anyone hanging. Let me see. The secret sauce, what the hell? Alright, y'all. You know that I always read the comments. I didn't mean to leave anyone hanging, but honestly, I'm out of gas. I'm out of fuel. My car's running. Now I'm going on fumes here, so I don't know. It's been about an hour. Alright, y'all. Thank you so much. I apologize if I left anyone hanging. And, I've never done that before, but listen, I'll see y'all in the next video. And, yep, thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you so much. And, I hope y'all have a wonderful day. And I will see y'all in the next video. Alright, have a great day, y'all. See y'all in the next video.